If I was to put together a list of greatest pay-per-views of all time, the 1993 King of the Ring will probably be at or near the top of my list every single time. The 1993 King of the Ring was one of the greatest WWE pay-per-views ever. It was the Bret Hart show. I really don't understand why WWE never warmed up to the King of the Ring. I never understood why WWE really brought down the prestige and never took the King of the Ring seriously. The King of the Ring was primarily used in the mid-80s to sell house show live events. It was never televised, and it was not done for storyline purposes. I was too young to realize that. I found that out after the fact when I did my research on what the King of the Ring really was. It was in 1993 where WWE resurrected that concept and brought it to life as one of the big four pay-per-views. You had the Royal Rumble, you had WrestleMania, you had King of the Ring, SummerSlam, and then Survivor Series. There was the Big Five back in the early 90s. King of the Ring was added to the original pay-per-view lineup. The 1993 King of the Ring was the Bret Hart show. Now, depending on who you talk to, this is a very subjective issue. We all know what happened in 1993 in April, WrestleMania, Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. Bret Hart defended the WWF Championship against Yokozuna in a match that wasn't very good, and it was WWE trying to build Yokozuna up as an unstoppable heel monster within the company. Bret Hart did all that he could to get a decent match out of Yokozuna up until Yokozuna beat Bret Hart for the WWF Championship as he had the sharpshooter applied on the 500-pound behemoth. And all it took was Mr. Fuji to throw a handful of salt in Bret's eyes, and that was it. It was over, and we have a new WWF champion. Hulk Hogan, with his black eye, who fought earlier in the night with Brutus the Barber Beefcake for the tag team championships at the time, held by Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and IRS. Hulk Hogan came out sporting his red and yellow and issued a challenge to Yokozuna for the WWE Championship with Bret's blessing. Hulk Hogan defeated Yokozuna in 30 seconds, and WrestleMania 9 went off the air with everybody with the same exact expression on everybody's face. What the fuck? Still to this day, I don't know why Hulk Hogan was sent out in that moment to win the title in an unsanctioned match against Yokozuna, who probably had the shortest WWE championship reign, WWF then championship reign, of all time. I still to this day do not know why. Hulk Hogan was WWF champion. He went into the King of the Ring, and he defended the title against Yokozuna in Dayton, Ohio. The heartland of America is what they called it. Now, the King of the Ring was the Bret Hart show. We all know the effort that Bret Hart put forth on that night, and everything that came out of that night, that tournament, revolved around Bret Hart. This is one of the reasons why I want the King of the Ring to come back to WWE pay-per-view. And if WWE did it the right way, possibly even expanded it from 8 to 16, maybe 16 to 32, or took a page from New Japan's book and did something similar to the G1 Climax on WWE television. Tournaments are good business. there are so many positives that come out of a good tournament than there are negative. Look at the amount of talent in WWE that could possibly benefit from a huge tournament like the King of the Ring. Not only that, a tournament like this being brought back to WWE pay-per-view not only would create new superstars, not only would it create excitement, not only would it bring back that sports-like atmosphere that WWE has done so well with these tournaments in the last few years with the Cruiserweight Classic, the UK tournament, the Mae Young Classic, but it would actually make WWE's life easier. It would make WWE's life easier. The King of the Ring is the perfect bridge between WrestleMania and SummerSlam. WWE along the way can create new superstars and give us intriguing matchups that we normally wouldn't see on WWE television. It's the perfect pay-per-view to join the brands. Whereas we don't usually get that a lot throughout the year, except for the Royal Rumble and Survivor Series, where Raw and SmackDown go head-to-head one against one another. WWE could lay the foundation and give themselves an easy out. Not only an easy out for them creatively, it gives us something to look forward to. If WWE brought back the King of the Ring in June, we would already have the number one contender lined up for whatever brand wins it, whether he's on Raw or SmackDown. We would already have a championship match in place at SummerSlam. Whoever the WWE or Universal Champion is at that time, you would already have your main event lined up for SummerSlam. That is so easy on the minds of creative going into August. I don't understand why WWE doesn't do it when there are so many positives compared to the negatives. It was the Bret Hart show in 1993. Yokozuna was challenging for the WWF Championship against Hulk Hogan, who seemingly stole it from him in Las Vegas at WrestleMania 9. A lot of people were lobbying for Bret Hart to get a rematch for the WWF Championship at the King of the Ring against Hulk Hogan. That would have made the most sense out of everything. WWE did not do that. Hulk Hogan did not want to defend the WWF Championship against Bret Hart. Hulk Hogan wanted to defend the title against Yokozuna because of reasons that he explained. Whether he is full of shit or whether you believe him, I don't know. But Hulk Hogan wanted to defend the title against Yokozuna because Yokozuna was the heel monster, and Hulk Hogan's days were pretty much numbered at that point. He wanted to put over the heel monster in that instance instead of giving Bret Hart the rub at the King of the Ring. Hulk Hogan's ideology going into this would be, if I lay down for Yokozuna and I put over this monster new heel in the company and he takes the WWF Championship away from me, Hulk Hogan's mindset was whoever is going to beat Yokozuna would have done something that Hulkamania could not do. Whether you believe that or not, I don't know. I really don't know. Hulk Hogan has been known to spew a ton of bullshit at everybody that is willing to listen. All I've ever heard is that Hulk Hogan is about himself. Hulk Hogan does make sense in that, whether he's telling the truth or not. He does make sense. But did Hulk Hogan view Bret the Hitman Hart as not worthy to lead the company at that time? Did Hulk Hogan view Bret Hart as not a big money maker and not worthy of carrying the biggest prize in that company as its number one man? I don't know. Or was it that Hulk Hogan didn't want to lie down for the much smaller, inferior Bret the Hitman Hart? This is why the King of the Ring revolved around Bret Hart. It was I would say, a makeup for what they did at WrestleMania 9. It was Vince McMahon saying, we fucked up at WrestleMania, and this is my consolation to you. This is my reward for you doing what you did at WrestleMania. We are going to give you the King of the Ring in 1993, and we're going to build this pay-per-view around you, your trials and tribulations, to become the first ever official on pay-per-view King of the WWF. Hulk Hogan lost to Yokozuna. Hulk Hogan lost the WWF Championship to Yokozuna when a mock cameraman who was dressed as Harvey Wimpleman in the most bizarre outfit I have ever seen. He was wearing this multicolored fucking nonsense with a fisherman hat and this fake beard. Now, Harvey Wimpleman was on this show, coincidentally, as he was managing Mr. Hughes, who went up against Mr. Perfect in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament. Harvey Wimpleman came out and was dressed as this mock cameraman who played into the decision at the end of the Hogan-Yokozuna match. Harvey Wimpleman, dressed as this cameraman, got on the apron, wanted to photograph up close Hulk Hogan about to slam Yokozuna in the middle of the ring and retain the WWF Championship. Whereas all the other Japanese photographers were lined up on the outside, Harvey Wimpleman, dressed as this mock cameraman, gets up on the apron, takes his camera, shoots at Hulk Hogan, and the camera explodes in Hulk Hogan's face, releasing a huge fireball that was visible to everybody in the arena. Hulk Hogan was blinded. Yokozuna gave him a double thrust to the throat and beat him with his own finishing move, the big leg. 1, 2, 3. Yokozuna was the new WWF champion. Hulk Hogan was squashed, literally, after this match was over, with Bobby the Brain Heenan uttering the words, "Hulkamania is dead. The bright lights and the spotlights of the WWF once again were too big for the Hulkster." Everybody knew Hulk Hogan was about to walk out of the WWF. That was his last major pay-per-view for the WWF before he defected to WCW. Bret the Hitman Hart won the King of the Ring. Bret the Hitman Hart won the 1993 King of the Ring. Now, with Macho Man on commentary, he made a mention of it. Something that I knew watching this back in the day would certainly be a logical decision. The winner of the King of the Ring should undoubtedly be the number one contender for the WWF Championship. We should have gotten Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart at the King of the Ring for the title. For whatever reason, whatever bullshit Hogan spewed out of his mouth, we didn't get it. WWE then had the opportunity to grant Bret Hart a title shot in which he certainly deserved again at SummerSlam in 1993 in Michigan. WWE did not go with Bret Hart versus Yokozuna for the WWF Championship in a rematch from WrestleMania 9 back in April of that year. They went with the Lex Express. They went with Lex Luger. Hulk Hogan had left the company at this point. I don't know if Vince did not believe in Bret Hart enough to have him get his deserved title shot. I don't know what factored into Bret Hart not getting that title shot, but I think we can all sit down and agree here that Bret Hart was screwed in 1993 from getting the WWF Championship back in a deserved way following what happened to him at WrestleMania in 1993. He was the number one contender for the WWF Championship coming out of the King of the Ring. WWE dropped the ball with the King of the Ring. Instead of going all the way with Bret Hart, Vince McMahon seeked and sought out another replacement for Hulk Hogan. He wanted another big baby face that would ultimately replace the absence left by Hulk Hogan. He thought that man was Lex Luger. Big, strong, muscular, great look, young. Someone that the fans could ultimately believe in. Vince McMahon honed on Lex Luger to be that guy. And Lex Luger was never that guy. So who really screwed Bret Hart for the WWF Championship in 1993? There were rumors going around that the proposed match, even before the King of the Ring took place, even before the King of the Ring was announced, was going to be Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart at SummerSlam. I don't know why that match didn't take place. WWF created the King of the Ring right then and there. For whatever reason. As a make-up to Bret. To add another pay-per-view to the calendar. I don't know. The King of the Ring was not on the initial pay-per-view calendar. Hulk Hogan beating Yokozuna coming out of WrestleMania. He was supposed to be the champion going into SummerSlam. It was supposed to be Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. There was posters made with Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart, which was confirmed by Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson, of them having tug of war on the promotional poster for the 1993 SummerSlam with the WWF Championship. Again, I reiterate, Hogan wanted to put over the monster heel in Yokozuna. Hogan's mindset was, if Yokozuna is the monster champion, and someone along the way, whenever that time is, beats him, that person would have done something Hulk Hogan could not do, and that person would be a bigger star. Clearly it wasn't Bret, and clearly it wasn't Lex. With the rumor of Bret and Hogan happening at 1993 SummerSlam, with the inclusion of the King of the Ring to the 1993 pay-per-view calendar, who really fucked Bret Hart in the end here? Was it Hulk Hogan? Was it Hulk Hogan for not defending the title or not wanting to defend the title against Bret Hart at SummerSlam? Or was it really Vince McMahon who fucked Bret Hart over in 1993? And it took Bret Hart to win the King of the Ring and not get a championship match until WrestleMania 10 the following year at Madison Square Garden. What took so long? Was it Hulk Hogan? Was it Hulk Hogan being bitter and not wanting to lay down for the smaller Bret Hart? Were the house show live gate numbers really that bad for WWE in 1993 with Bret on top as champion for the first 3 months? What was it? Or was it Vince McMahon getting cold feet and promising something to Bret that never came to fruition until 1994, thanks to fan support? We got to the 1994 Royal Rumble with that fuck finish at the end of the 1994 Royal Rumble where we had dual winners. We had Lex Luger and Bret Hart, the final two, coincidentally. The final two guys in the Royal Rumble. And WWE, again, got cold feet. They got cold feet. They did not know what man they wanted to go with, even in 1994. Both men went over the top rope. Both feet hit the floor first. And we had dual winners for the 1994 Royal Rumble, which led to a double main event at WrestleMania 10. Lex Luger fought Yokozuna in one main event earlier in the night while Bret battled Owen in what was one of the greatest WWF matches of all time. One of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. Lex got Yoko. Lex did not get the job done. Lex did not get the job done. But Bret got his rematch with Yokozuna. Bret got the WWF Championship at the end of WrestleMania 10, as the entire locker room that year lifted Bret on their shoulders, proclaiming him to be the man in the company finally after a year-long wait of Vince McMahon getting cold feet. It would have been interesting to see Bret versus Lex in the main event of WrestleMania 10. That's another thing I wonder about, why WWE didn't go with that. Maybe they wanted Bret to overcome Yokozuna after that fuck finish at WrestleMania 9. Undoubtedly, the better match would have been Lex versus Bret. I was actually more intrigued by that match happening than seeing another rematch with Yokozuna, but like I said, I guess WWE wanted to repay Bret and have everything come full circle from where it already started at WrestleMania 9 to only finish at WrestleMania 10. But do you guys believe Hulk Hogan? Do you guys believe Hulk Hogan in what he said? I honestly think Hogan has a point in not wanting to lay down for Bret. You know, it's one of those conspiracy theory situations, really. You know, I feel like we were fucking robbed as fans from not seeing Bret versus Hulk Hogan. No matter if it was at King of the Ring or SummerSlam. I feel like we are sitting here in the year 2018 and we just had the 25-year anniversary of the 1993 King of the Ring, and we're still talking about what if Bret Hart went one-on-one with Hulk Hogan. Certainly would have been an intriguing match. No matter what event it took place in Detroit or Ohio at Dayton. I would have loved to see the dynamic of Bret and Hulk. Now, I don't know if it would have been a great match. Bret Hart was one of the best wrestlers in the world at that point. Bret Hart is one of my all-time favorites. There's no doubt in my mind that Bret probably would have took Hogan to a great match. Hogan didn't want to lay down for Bret. And I don't know what the reason is, except for the reason that Hogan gave. The only other time we would have seen a dynamic besides Bret and Hogan was with Hogan Warrior at WrestleMania 6. In the Skydome that night, it wasn't that bad for Hogan if he was worried about the one thing that I'm pretty sure he was worried about. During WrestleMania 6, Hogan was still beloved. Hogan was still in the height of his push. Warrior was the new big thing coming on the scene, and Warrior won the WWF Championship and was both IC and WWF Champion following WrestleMania 6. Yeah, Hogan, the more he was being presented as a top guy, the more people started to resent it. It's not as bad as what we're seeing with Roman Reigns now, but as the years went on, people were getting sick and tired of seeing Hogan on top. They wanted to see a new blood at the top of the WWE hierarchy. So from WrestleMania 6, where we were with Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, to 1993, if it took place at the King of the Ring, or if it took place at SummerSlam, maybe Hogan was worried about really having the fans turn on him and support Bret in that moment, knowing the fans know that Bret got fucked. That Bret lost the title at WrestleMania because you didn't give him a rematch. You took the title from him with no reason given. Maybe he was worried about that. I don't know. All we know is what Hogan stated. And Hogan stated that he wanted to drop the title preferably to a large heel monster, because Hogan was known to feud with large heel monsters. And he didn't want to do the job to Bret. He didn't want to give us the vision and the match of Bret versus Hogan, whether at King of the Ring or SummerSlam 1993. But Bret got what was coming to him anyway. It just took a fucking year for everything to come full circle. It's funny how WWE and Vince McMahon looked at Lex Luger as the next Hulk Hogan, and he failed miserably. He failed miserably in 1993. The body slam on the Intrepid, the Lex Express to get this guy over, shoving this guy down our throats, when you had Bret Hart, who was the number one contender, the true number one contender, getting the fucking shaft. Bret goes from winning the King of the Ring in 1993, becoming the number one contender, not getting a shot at Hulk Hogan, not getting a shot at the WWF title, period, to fighting Doink at SummerSlam, and then Jerry the King Lawler at SummerSlam that same night, moving on to Survivor Series with fucking Ray Combs doing commentary during the Knights and Shawn Michaels versus Bret and his brothers, in what was probably one of the most cringeworthy Survivor Series matches of all time. Then winning the Royal Rumble, not really officially winning the Royal Rumble, he had to share the honor with Lex Luger, only to get the title back, which he should have gotten a rematch at way earlier than that, at WrestleMania 10 by defeating Yokozuna. If anybody fucked Bret in this instance, Hogan can spew all the bullshit he wants. He does make sense in some aspects. But if you're looking at anybody who fucked Bret, it more than likely was Vince McMahon. Vince could have easily went with Bret at SummerSlam in 1993. Easily could have went with Bret. No, but he wanted Yokozuna and Lex Luger. What a shit main event that was. Lex Luger won the match. He didn't win the title. Acted as if he did win the title. Everybody came out with balloons and the fucking roster came out because he slayed the beast. He didn't win the fucking title. He didn't beat anybody. He ended up being an ultimate loser at the end of that night. And where was Bret? Where was Bret? Why didn't they give the honor to Bret? It's like an unsolved mystery. No matter what you think about Bret and his drawing power in 1993, and the fact that live show gates were down and money revenue for house shows was down. It was down in 1992. It was worse in 1993. But you can't blame that on one fucking guy. You can't blame that on Bret. Why would anybody point the finger of blame at Bret Hart? He's the reason for the entire company not drawing house show numbers in 1993? A guy who was pretty much on the rise, coming up through the ranks at the height of his fucking career. Or about to be in the height of his career. You're going to blame that on him. You're not going to blame that on everything else that was going on in WWE at that time. Hogan wasn't there. Hogan wasn't there. He wasn't there in the beginning of 1993. He was only there to back up Brutus Beefcake in their feud with Money Inc. He wasn't in any major storyline. He wasn't at the top of the card. Hogan was actually in the mid-card in early 1993. Then he won the title from Yokozuna at WrestleMania. He didn't defend the title up until King of the Ring that year. So you can't point the finger of blame at Bret Hart for house shows being down. The entire company was going through a transitional phase. Hogan was on the way out. Nobody believed in Lex Luger. The Lex Express bullshit was fucking terrible. Lex Luger's greatest gimmick, I will say this, every fucking time someone wants to argue about Lex Luger with me, Lex Luger's best gimmick in his entire career was the narcissist. That gimmick was fucking... He played that gimmick absolutely brilliant. I never looked at Lex Luger as a top babyface. Ever. Ever. That went to Bret Hart. The only thing that Vince McMahon seen was, oh, how am I going to replace Hulk Hogan? And he got cold feet. I can't look at Bret. Nobody's going to believe him as a believable champion. Nobody's going to look at him as the guy to beat Yokozuna. We got to get Lex in there. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful, he's much larger. He's a more believable opponent for Lex Luger. Meanwhile, Vince McMahon just fell on deaf ears to what everybody wanted. When people were cheering for Bret in the 1994 Royal Rumble, that's probably what opened his eyes. And then when we got to WrestleMania and Bret gave everybody the match of the fucking year, outside of what Razor and Shawn did at that very same event at WrestleMania 10, one of the greatest matches of all time. Those two matches were two of the greatest matches ever. He gave Bret the title in 1994 at WrestleMania 10 in the main event. But we sit here 25 years later wondering, what if Bret and Hogan got in the ring? I don't think it would have been as bad as it was for Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania in the Sky Dome. Remember that? Hogan went into that as a heel. The NWO had just come back to the WWF. The Rock was a baby face. Hogan was Hollywood Hogan, heel. He entered that match as a heel and came out the biggest baby face of the night. It was like Hulkamania was resurrected in 20 minutes. There was nobody in that arena that did not want to see what had happened there. Nobody wanted to see The Rock win that match. Everybody was looking at Hollywood Hogan, but what they wanted was the yellow and red. 68,000 people booed The Rock. I don't get it. Maybe Hogan was worried that Bret and Hogan in 1993 was going to result in something like that. I don't think so. Bret was over, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it would be to that level. It's what if, man. It's one of those what if situations that we will never know. And Bruce Pritchard, Conrad Thompson have confirmed that before the King of the Ring was even fucking announced as an event, it was going to be Hogan and Bret. They had promotional paperwork and promotional posters ready for that to main event SummerSlam. Hogan promised Bret to give him the rematch. Hogan changed his mind on Bret Hart and wanted to go with Yokozuna instead, because of exactly the reason that I told you Hogan stated. But who really fucked Bret? Was it Hogan for turning his back and taking away the promise that he promised Bret? Or was it Vince McMahon who allowed this to just go on throughout the rest of the year? With Bret winning the King of the Ring and never getting a title shot until WrestleMania the next year. It rendered the King of the Ring useless, and Bret won the Royal Rumble with Lex Luger tied side by side. And Bret never really got the spotlight that he solely deserved on his own. He always had to share it with somebody. It was Hulk. It was Lex. He was over. He wasn't Daniel Bryan, Yes Movement over. But the fans clearly got behind Bret enough that Vince finally said, fuck it, we got to go with him. Because it wasn't working out for Lex, and people wanted Bret over Lex. The WWE had winds of change swirling about in 1994. Bret was that change. It's nice to think about, man. It's crazy to think about what could have been with 1993. And going into that King of the Ring tournament, you know, we didn't really think about this type of thing back when we were younger. I actually just recently watched the entire event last week. And it still holds up, even in 2018. It really does. How WWE dropped the ball at making that one of its major shows every single year, man. It's criminal. It is absolutely criminal. And you look back at that show, and you look at what it did for Bret. You know, he was already a one-time WWF champion. They had this whole Hogan, Yokozuna bullshit going on. But Bret was a relatively new face to the main event scene. They finally gave him the ball to run with it. that tournament made Brett who he was. Let me rephrase it. It didn't make Brett who he was. He was Brett before that tournament. But that tournament solidified Brett as the type of underdog character that we've seen in pretty much his entire career. The guy was so believable at everything that he did in that ring. We legitimately felt bad for him because he sold as great as anybody in the history of this company. When he took a beating, we genuinely felt sorry for him. We don't really feel that way about many people in WWE nowadays. The only one I could really think of that I feel bad for because he's so great at what he does is Johnny Gargano. He is unbelievable in the story that he tells with his body language and facial expressions. Brett was the same way. That entire tournament, Brett just let you in on who he was. You felt the fucking pain that this guy was going through. He battled Razor Ramon in the first match of the night. Razor Ramon was a guy in 1993 at the Royal Rumble who gave Brett a great fucking match and proved to be a worthy opponent for the WWF Championship. That was his first title defense. Go back before. Shawn Michaels at the 1992 Survivor Series. It was champion versus champion. But Razor Ramon coming out of the 1992 Survivor Series to be that big of a threat to Bret Hart was not only a testament to what Bret could do against a much larger guy, but Razor Ramon was a stand-up fucking just classy wrestler. He was very underrated. And for him to get that type of match so early on in his WWF run, I mean, he passed that fucking test in that match with flying colors. So to see WWE already booking the tournament with Brett and one of his first adversaries as WWF champion was brilliant. Nobody knew Brett as better in that tournament outside of Mr. Perfect than Razor Ramon. Razor Ramon went right for the fingers. It was something that came about in the match, but Razor Ramon stomped on Brett's hands in that match. That was the telling tale of that opening match for 10 minutes. Brett came out, beat Razor Ramon with some sort of fluky victory. He had some type of headlock applied. He jumped up and used the top turnbuckle to propel himself over Razor Ramon and pinned his shoulders down to the mat. But the story coming out of the match was Brett was already banged up before he even made a semifinal appearance. Mr. Perfect advanced to the semifinals by beating Mr. Hughes by disqualification. Mr. Hughes, I don't think, realized how great of a chance he had here in the King of the Ring. Mr. Hughes was embroiled in a feud with The Undertaker and Paul Bearer at the time. He was in possession of Paul Bearer's urn. The urn back in the day was the big thing about The Undertaker and what gave him his power. Mr. Hughes took the urn, and he had the urn in his corner, managed by Harvey Wippleman, got himself disqualified in the first round of the tournament. So Mr. Perfect and Brett moved on to the semifinals, and coincidentally, will be facing each other in the semifinals. Bam Bam Bigelow versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. This was a no-brainer. I never liked Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I always thought he was a cheesy character. He was just one of them. He was one of those WWE quote-unquote character types, with the loud statement, ho, and the 2x4. I was never a Jim Duggan fan. Jim Duggan was never what we, especially coming from where he was, back when I was just growing into the fucking WWF. He was portrayed more like a novelty act, a comedy character in WWF. Bam Bam Bigelow beat him with a top rope headbutt because in the match, Duggan had injured his rib cage. I think he tried to shoulder tackle Duggan in the corner, and Bam Bam Bigelow moved out, and Duggan hit his ribs on the top turnbuckle while flying at Bigelow. And Bigelow obviously took advantage of that, nailed a big flying headbutt off the top rope right into the ribcage, and that pinned and beat Hacksaw Jim Duggan in the first round of this tournament. Bam Bam Bigelow moved on. The other first round match is something that I look at each and every time the King of the Ring is brought up in a topical way. One of the best King of the Ring matches ever was with Lex Luger as the Narcissist against the Native American Tatanka. What made this match so intriguing was not only Tatanka was feuding with Bigelow at the time, and to see Tatanka and Bigelow in the semifinals along with Brett and Perfect, but both Tatanka and Lex Luger as the Narcissist were undefeated in WWF. So to see two guys who were undefeated, one of these guys was going to have to win, right? One of these guys was going to have to move on to the semifinals, right? WWE protected both guys by having that match go 15 minutes to a draw. Now, the first round was 15 minutes, time limit. Second round was 30. The finals was 60. There was no way anybody was going to go 60 minutes in the finals after going through this type of tournament. Nobody. But Bigelow was in the finals because Tatanka and Luger went to a draw. This match was great. This match was great. It started off slow. Luger made the intros first, and it's just so iconic when I see this. He's got that narcissist theme going on, and he stands in front of the mirror. He's posing, right? He's got the fucking cape on. He's looking at himself because he's so full of himself. Tatanka comes down, says, fuck this shit, runs down the aisle, shoves the mirror on top of Lex Luger, and he says, get this shit out of the ring. We are here to crown a king. You're not here to pose. The funniest thing was when Luger was in the ring, he seen Tatanka come down. He nailed Tatanka with a few fists, threw him over the top rope. When the bell rang, wasting time in the match, he was still posing in the mirror with the bell already ringing. He didn't give a shit. Luger didn't give a fuck. It was so hilarious. The main thing about this match, and the main thing with Luger, was that he was finishing people off with his bionic elbow. Now, Luger was in a huge motorcycle accident back around WrestleMania 8. Because he was actually being primed and groomed to come into the WWF around WrestleMania 8. Bobby Heenan mentioned him during the broadcast. Luger was in a terrible motorcycle accident, and it could have ruined his entire career. He had reconstructive surgery. He had steel plates in his arm. WWE actually used that as a going storyline for Luger. And during this match, they had, before the bell even sounded, Luger was forced to put on a black elbow pad because they didn't want him knocking Tatanka out and gaining easy access to the semifinals. So they had him put an elbow pad on, and if he didn't abide by the rules, he was disqualified, and Tatanka was going to move on to fight Bam Bam Bigelow in the semifinals. Needless to say, this match went to a draw. Great match down the stretch. They pulled out literally everything in both men's arsenals, and it went to a 15-minute draw. Luger got on the microphone and said, you know, I want 5 more minutes. I came here to be the king of the ring. Give me 5 more minutes. Tatanka was ready to go. Luger was ready to go. Mike Chioda, the referee during this match, did not allow it. Cannot. It's over with. It's a draw. Bigelow's moving on to the finals. So Luger, at the end of this thing, blindsided Tatanka, took the elbow pad off, hit him with a fucking running forearm that knocked him out cold. Bobby Heenan on commentary. Looks like, to me, the winner of this match, the Narcissist, Lex Luger. And then Macho Man was going crazy on commentary. You know, he's a cheapskate. He's a cheater. He's pathetic. You know. It was just a great atmosphere, man. Dayton, Ohio at the Notice Center was just a great atmosphere during that entire thing. So Bigelow got a bye. And that was the selling point of the rest of the tournament. Bigelow got a rest. He went on to the finals. Meanwhile, Brett had to fight Mr. Perfect, which he did. 20 minutes. Match went 20 minutes. Now, Bret already had the injured fingers. Perfect and Bret, before this, had a history. In 1991, it was Bret versus Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship. A match in which Bret won his first Intercontinental Championship. Bret and Perfect cut a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund before this match, bringing up the fact that Mr. Perfect lost. And Mr. Perfect says, I didn't forget SummerSlam, Bret. I didn't forget 91. I owe you. You know, and Bret is going on and on and on. And Perfect said that he's going to become the king of the ring. And he's going to beat Bret Hart and he's going to avenge his loss in 1991. They brought up each other's fathers. You know, Bret says, my father cannot wrestle your father. Mr. Perfect said his father cannot wrestle his father. It was just a great dynamic between these two, man. That was the two matches that these guys had. And I'll always, again, another topic of discussion when it comes to the King of the Ring. Mr. Perfect versus Bret the Hitman Hart in the 1993 SummerSlam not only was better than their 1991 match at SummerSlam. It blew that match out of the fucking water. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Mr. Perfect versus Bret the Hitman Hart at the 1993 King of the Ring is the personification of what a tournament match should be. Absolutely. Down to the very last fucking 3 count made by Earl Hebner. This is what a tournament match should be. There's no doubt in my mind, in 1993, when you look back at that fucking year in WWF, what the match of the year was in 1993, it is Mr. Perfect versus Bret the Hitman Hart at the 1993 King of the Ring. That match, even to this day, stands the test of that match alone. Never mind the pay-per-view as a whole. That match alone stands the test of time. And I would put that match up against anything that we see on television today in 2018. What a fantastic fucking match. Bret already had the injured fingers. Mr. Perfect was fresh as a fucking daisy. Yeah, he had his match with Mr. Hughes, but he didn't have a fucking knockout, drag down affair with fucking Razor Ramon like Bret the Hitman Hart did. Mr. Perfect was much fresher than Bret Hart. And Mr. Perfect was as physical as ever. He exploited Bret in every which way. Bret actually, during this match, before Mr. Perfect even found out and honed in on the hands and the fingers, Mr. Perfect shoved Bret off the ring apron, and Bret went flying, pretty much landing right by the feet of Macho Man Randy Savage, who was on commentary with Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. By the way, about the commentary on the show, I hear a lot of people don't like the commentary. I thought the commentary, even though a minor miscue here from Jim Ross every now and then, Bobby Heenan was, in 1993, on top of his fucking game. Macho Man was a nice addition, in my honest opinion, to the commentary booth. And Jim Ross was a young Jim Ross. I mean, who the fuck doesn't love Jim Ross, you know? And the voice of Jim Ross calling a wrestling match in the 90s. Gotta be out of your fucking mind. Bret landed off the apron. Mr. Perfect shoved him off, takes the ropes, and just almost fucking launches him into the steel barricade. What people don't realize is that Bret not only landed on the steel barricade, he landed on some production equipment. He landed on a fucking bucket full of ice and fucking canned sodas laying at ringside, some production equipment. So his knee was hurt. His knee was injured at that point. On top of the fingers and his rib cage. Bret was all banged up. Knees, ribs, fingers. Mr. Perfect looked like he was going to go on to battle Bam Bam Bigelow in the finals. Mr. Perfect was doing everything that he could to win this match. Bret finally battled back. He then started to hone in on Mr. Perfect's leg. He applied the figure 4 in the middle of the ring, man. And when I tell you, when Bret Hart applied that figure 4 leg lock in this match, the selling that Mr. Perfect did in the middle of that ring with the figure 4 applied, no one today sold like Mr. Perfect. Nobody. When that hold was broken, Perfect got to the ropes. Perfect sold that shit for the majority of the match. Bret went for the leg, trying to set him up with the sharpshooter, and he could not get the sharpshooter on Mr. Perfect. Bret actually didn't win one match in this entire tournament, this entire night, with the sharpshooter. He tried to hone in on the legs. And by the end of this thing, Mr. Perfect ended up losing by a small package reversal. He had Bret beat with a small package. All Bret did was flip it over. While the move was applied, Bret, all he did was roll over. He had Mr. Perfect's shoulders pinned. 1, 2, 3. Bret Hart wins. One of the greatest pay-per-view matches you will ever see against Mr. Perfect. At the end of this thing, like I told you, Mr. Perfect said, I owe you for SummerSlam, Hart. I owe you for SummerSlam, Hitman, is what he said. Perfect was fucking angry. Camera zoomed in on him at the end of this thing. He's limping around ringside. He's all disheveled. He's got his fucking singlet all off. That's bogus. That's bogus, he starts yelling to Earl Hebner. That's bogus, ref. That's bogus. Bret is in the ring celebrating. Mr. Perfect gets back in the ring. I don't know what he said to Bret Hart. He started mouthing off at Bret Hart. And all of a sudden, in this angry fucking tone, his body language is all angry. I thought he was going to fucking sucker punch him. Mr. Perfect extends his hand in respect. Bret looking around. Bret shakes his hand, and Mr. Perfect gives him a sign of respect and gives him a quick slap on the shoulder, you know, as if he said, you better win this fucking tournament. What a great fucking match, man. What a fantastic fucking match. That was the tournament. The finals were all set up. It was Bret versus Bam Bam. Bret versus Bam Bam. And with Bret's fingers, ribs, leg, all injured. Bret fatigued. He went 10 minutes with Razor. He went fucking 20 minutes with Mr. Perfect in a grueling match. Bam Bam wrestled Duggan and beat him in 4 minutes. Fresh as a newborn baby. Just fucking changed and powdered. Bam Bam Bigelow was. So going into this thing, watching this as a young child, we're all thinking, Bret is fucked. Bret Hart is fucked. So that was the finals of the tournament. Obviously, we had Hulk Hogan, Yokozuna. You guys know about that. That was the whole premise of this entire review, was Hogan and Yokozuna. Hogan lost the title. Hulkamania was squashed by the Banzai drop at the end of this thing. Shawn Michaels defended the Intercontinental Championship against Crush. The Hawaiian Crush that they started to push and wanted to get him, you know, into a higher spot on the card. It was, for the IC title, we had Diesel introduced on this show, formerly as Diesel. Shawn Michaels revealed the information to Mean Gene before the match. And Diesel was in Shawn Michaels' corner. Now, this match wasn't bad, but the ending was a fuck finish. Obviously, Shawn Michaels, I've stated this, I loved Shawn Michaels' run through 1993 as the Intercontinental Champion. You know, if he didn't get nailed for a fucking drug violation in 1993, he still would have been the Intercontinental Champion. That's the reason why they had him off television right after SummerSlam, going into Survivor Series, because he failed a drug violation. They had to strip him of the title. They needed the title on TV because it was the second biggest title in the company. It's not like nowadays where you got fucking 16 championships that mean absolutely nothing. They had a battle royal, and the finals of this battle royal were the model Rick Martel and Razor Ramon. Razor Ramon obviously won the Intercontinental Championship, and they went with that as Razor being the Intercontinental Champion. Shawn Michaels came back after his 30 days were up, and he still had the Intercontinental Championship. He was going around parading with the Intercontinental Championship when Razor Ramon had formally won the title, officially won the title. And Shawn Michaels was going around saying that Razor Ramon was the fake Intercontinental Champion and that he was the real one. That's what led to their match at WrestleMania 10 at Madison Square Garden in that acclaimed ladder match with both Intercontinental Championships hanging from the rafters. So that was the reason for that. I love Shawn Michaels' IC title run in 1993. Great match with Jannetty, with Sensational Sherry being a centerpiece in that at the Royal Rumble in 1993. Great match with Tatanka at WrestleMania 9. That actually was the best match on the entire show. It actually opened up that show as well. And I love the layout of Caesar's Palace for WrestleMania 9, man. I know it wasn't a really great WrestleMania, but I love the atmosphere for WrestleMania 9. SummerSlam, he defended the title against Mr. Perfect. King of the Ring, he defended it against Crush. He beat Crush because Doink came down. Not one Doink, two Doinks. It was a double Doink. appeared at ringside to create a distraction. And Doink at the time was feuding with Crush. So Crush was distracted by this. Michaels capitalized on a distraction and hit him with a super kick when he turns around. Boom. Done. Michaels retains the Intercontinental Championship because of a double Doink distraction. They had a huge 8-man tag here with pretty much all the tag teams in the WWE. The Smoking Guns and the Steiner Brothers teamed up against the Head Shrinkers and Money Inc. The Head Shrinkers and the Steiner Brothers actually went 2-on-2 at WrestleMania 9, so this was just kind of a take on continuing what they had started there. Money Inc. were still the tag team champions at this point, and the tag team scene in WWEF at this time really wasn't all that great. Money Inc. was on the last leg of their title run. You know, you kind of felt the Steiner Brothers were going to be the new flag bearers for the tag team division as their tag team champions. The Smoking Guns, I never liked their gimmick whatsoever. I thought it was fucking cheesy. You know, Bobby Heenan was classic on commentary during this match. I think Jim Ross mentioned that Billy Gunn went to rodeo school because, you know, the Smoking Guns had their fucking prop guns and the fucking bullwhips and all that shit, right? So Jim Ross mentioned on commentary that Billy Gunn attended rodeo school. And Bobby Heenan's laughing, you know, over there like Heenan usually does. He starts laughing at that. Rodeo school? What did he major in? Roping? You know, Heenan was fucking classic on commentary. So this one ended when Billy Gunn caught DiBiase off guard with a small package cradle for the win. Really wasn't anything. It was just a time filler right before the last two matches on the show, which were the IC title and then Bret Hart versus Bam Bam Bigelow in the finals. And then in the finals, Bam Bam Bigelow versus Bret the Hitman Hart. This was his third match in the night, whereas Bam Bam only had one. This was great drama because of Bret's fatigue. The injuries, like I told you, with Bret, his hands, Razor injured his hands, Mr. Perfect injured his rib cage and his knee. The drama coming out of everything that Bret's been through to go up against a 350-pound fresh Bam Bam Bigelow who's only wrestled 4 minutes and got a free pass to the finals pretty much. You know, nobody sold like Bret. And for Bret to beat Bam Bam Bigelow the way he did in such fluky-like fashion with a fucking victory roll. As he went up to the top rope and had Bam Bam Bigelow dazed, he sat on Bam Bam's shoulders and, you know, whoa, victory roll. Rolled him over, 1, 2, 3, and Bret the Hitman Hart was crowned the king of the ring. His night didn't even end there. After everything that this guy went through, beating from Razor, beating from Mr. Perfect, beating for most of the match with Bam Bam Bigelow, Bret's night was not done. Bret stood on the platform being coronated as king of the ring. He got the crown, he got the scepter, he got the cape. Mean Gene interviewed him. He was all banged up, he was all fucked up. Out of nowhere comes Jerry the King Lawler. Jerry the King Lawler proclaiming that there is only one true king in the WWE, and that Bret Hart is nothing but a pretender to the throne. So Bret Hart, in typical early 90s cheesy WWE fashion, the only king that you are is the Burger King. So obviously everybody, you know, was chanting Burger King. This was something along the lines that WWE would do for the kids. It's cheesy, you know. So the kids and everybody started to chant Burger King, Bret leading the charge. So Jerry the King Lawler with his scepter takes his scepter and rams it right into the already injured ribcage of Bret the Hitman Hart. He continues to kick Bret the Hitman Hart to the point where Bret's body is slumped over the steps that led up to the podium. Mean Gene got out of fucking Dodge because he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He didn't want to get in the middle of this thing. Bret was laying out flat on the steel steps, and Bret was nailed by a kick from Jerry Lawler that made him slide down the fucking steps. The King looked fucking vicious in this entire melee. He takes the scepter, he breaks the scepter over his knee, starts ripping the cape up. He takes the crown that Bret was wearing on his head for winning the first ever King of the Ring on pay-per-view, he steps on the crown, and Bret is just laid out at the end of this pay-per-view. That's what led to their match at the 1993 SummerSlam, which the King tried to get out of because he hired Doink to wrestle Bret for 20 minutes, and Jerry the King Lawler pretended to be injured, hobbling down to the ring on crutches. So Bret wrestled 20 minutes with Doink, only to find out that Jerry the King Lawler faked the entire injury, and King had to wrestle Bret, who already wrestled a great match with Doink for 20 minutes. He thought he was going to have the heads up on Bret Hart at SummerSlam 1993. It was supposed to be, just look at all the turn of events, man. It was supposed to be Bret versus Hogan at King of the Ring. King of the Ring was invented because Hogan didn't want to defend the title against Bret. He wanted to defend it against Yokozuna. It was supposed to be Bret versus Hogan at SummerSlam. They had promotional posters made for it. So Bret goes from battling Hogan, losing the title to Yoko at WrestleMania 9, battling Hogan at SummerSlam, winning the King of the Ring instead because Hogan wanted to defend the title against Yokozuna and drop the title to Yokozuna. Bret never got his title shot. He ends up fighting Doink, the Clown, at SummerSlam, and Jerry the King Lawler back-to-back in the same night at the 1993 SummerSlam, man. What a drastic fucking change that was. That's why I said I think Vince McMahon was the one who royally fucked Bret the Hitman Hart, because he never went with his gut instinct on pushing Bret over Lex Luger. Bret got the shaft until WrestleMania 10 came around, and then Vince finally came to his senses. 1993 King of the Ring, man. So many questions coming out of that entire pay-per-view. So many what-ifs come out of that tournament. But it's one of the greatest WWE shows of all time. It's one of those shows that if you watch today, even with everything that's going on right now, and the way WWE is perceiving itself to be, even now, still holds up. It still stands the test of time with everything that's gone on. And no matter what anybody says, the 1993 King of the Ring will always be at the top or near the top of my greatest pay-per-views of all time. And why WWE doesn't bring back the King of the Ring in some way, shape, or form to pay-per-view, where they have fucking, Hell in a Cell and TLC. The King of the Ring could prove to be probably the best show of the year if WWE just puts in the fucking time, effort, and resources to make it special again. There's so much positive to come out of the King of the Ring, especially now with the amount of talent that could fucking benefit from having a huge tournament to build themselves underneath. Why they don't do it, I don't know, man. I hope one day with all the tournaments that we are seeing on the WWE Network that Triple H brings back the King of the Ring and we see it somehow resurrected in the modern era of WWE. But if you have not watched the King of the Ring in 1993, I urge you guys to go watch it. On a hot summer night, you guys are chilling in the air conditioner, man. Turn on the WWE Network and go find out exactly what I'm talking about, man. You're not going to see a better performance today than what we've seen from Bret Hart on that night at the 1993 King of the Ring. That is my retro review of the 1993 King of the Ring, man. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is for Patreon only. You guys will not be seeing this on my channel at all. So if you guys want to sign up or tell a friend, there'll be more coming, man. They will be very happy to know that the Retro Off the Scripts are back, and they're going to be in video form from this point on. So we'll see what we do next, but enjoy the 1993 King of the Ring for now, guys, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you for all your support right here on Patreon.com, and I will see you guys very soon, man. Busy week coming up. This week in particular here, as we enter the second week of July, I will be in Pittsburgh this coming weekend for Extreme Rules 2018 with Shane Douglas. Going to be having fun with some of my fans out in Pittsburgh. Going to be attending Extreme Rules. Going to be having a live off the script. Should be great. And I got a lot of stuff to get ready this week with Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and a bunch of stuff, including off the script as well. So thank you guys for all your supports, and we'll see you guys soon. The next retro review right here on OTS Retro. Talk to you guys later.